Matthew Henry's commentary on Matthew 10:16-22. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. And you shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. But when they deliver you up, take no thought how or what you shall speak, for it shall be given you in that same hour what you shall speak. For it is not you that speak, but the Spirit of your Father which speaks in you. And the brother shall deliver up the brother to death, and the father the child. And the children shall rise up against their parents, and cause them to be put to death. And you shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But he that endures to the end shall be saved. These verses relate to the sufferings of Christ's ministers in their work, which they are here taught to expect and prepare for. They are directed also how to bear them and how to go on with their work in the midst of them. This part of the sermon looks further than to their present mission, for we don't find that they met with any great hardships or persecutions while Christ was with them, nor were they well able to bear them. But they are here forewarned of the troubles they should meet with when, after Christ's resurrection, their commission should be enlarged, and the kingdom of heaven which was not at hand should be actually set up. They dreamed of nothing then but outward pomp and power. But Christ tells them they must expect greater sufferings than they were yet called to, that they should then be made prisoners, when they expected to be made princes. It is good to be told what troubles we may hereafter meet with, that we may provide accordingly, and may not boast as if we had put off the harness, when we are yet but girding it on. We have here intermixed, first, predictions of trouble, and secondly, prescriptions of counsel and comfort with reference to it. First, we have here predictions of trouble, which the disciples should meet with in their work. Christ foresaw their sufferings as well as his own, and yet will have them to go on, as he went on himself, and he foretold them not only that the troubles might not be a surprise to them, and so a shock to their faith, but that being the accomplishment of a prediction, they might be a confirmation to their faith. He tells them what they should suffer and from whom. Number 1, what they should suffer. Hard things to be sure, for behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves, verse 16. And what may a flock of poor, helpless, unguarded sheep expected in the midst of a herd of ravenous wolves, but to be worried and torn? Note, wicked men are like wolves, and whose nature it is to devour and destroy. God's people, and especially his ministers, are like sheep among them, of a contrary nature and disposition, exposed to them, and commonly an easy prey to them. It looked unkind in Christ to expose them to so much danger, who had left all to follow him, but he knew that the glory reserved for his sheep, when in the great day they shall be set on his right hand, would be a recompense sufficient for sufferings as well as services. They are as sheep among wolves. That is frightful. But Christ sends them forth. That is comfortable, for he that sends them forth will protect them and bear them out. But that they might know the worst, he tells them particularly what they must expect. First, they must expect to be hated, verse 22. Ye shall be hated for my name's sake. That is a root of all the rest, and a bitter root it is. Note, those whom Christ loves the world hates, as whom the court blesses the country curses. If the world hated Christ without a cause, John 15:25, no marvel if it hated those that bore his image and served his interests. We hate what is nauseous, and they are counted as the offscouring of all things, 1 Corinthians 4:13. We hate what is noxious, and they are counted the troublers of the land, 1 Kings 18:17, and the tormentors of their neighbors, Revelation 11 verse 10. It is grievous to be hated, and to be the object of so much ill will, But it is for thy name's sake, which, as it speaks the true reason of the hatred, whatever is pretended, so it speaks comfort to them who are thus hated. It is for a good cause, and they have a good friend that shares with them in it and takes it to himself. Number 2. They must expect to be apprehended and arraigned as malefactors. Their restless malice is resistless malice, and they will not only attempt, but will prevail to deliver you up to the councils, verses 17 and 18, to the bench of aldermen or justices that take care of the public peace. Note, a deal of mischief is often done to good men under color of law and justice. In a place of judgment there is wickedness persecuting wickedness, Ecclesiastes 3:16. They must look for trouble not only from inferior magistrates in the councils, but from governors and kings as supreme magistrates. To be brought before them under such black representations as were commonly made of Christ's disciples was dreadful and dangerous, for the wrath of a king is as a roaring of a lion. We find this often fulfilled in the Acts of the Apostles. Number 3, they must expect to be put to death, verse 21. They shall deliver them to death in state with pomp and solemnity, when it shows itself most as the king of terrors. The malice of the enemies rages so high as to inflict this. It is the blood of the saints that they thirst after. The faith and patience of the saints stand so firm as to expect this. Neither count I my life dear to myself. The wisdom of Christ permits it, knowing how to make the blood of the martyrs the seal of the truth and the seed of the church. By this noble armies not loving their lives to the death, Satan has been vanquished, and the kingdom of Christ and its interests greatly advanced, Revelation 11, verse 11. They were put to death as criminals, so the enemies meant it, but really as sacrifices, as burnt offerings, sacrifices of acknowledgement to the honor of God and in his truth and cause. Number 4, they must expect, in the midst of these sufferings, to be branded with the most odious and ignominious names and characters that could be. Persecutors would be ashamed in this world if they did not first dress up those in bearskins whom they thus bait, and represent them in such colors as may serve to justify such cruelties. The blackest of all the ill characters they give them is here stated. They call them Beelzebub, the name of the prince of the devils, verse 25. They represent them as ringleaders of the interests of the kingdom of darkness, and since everyone thinks he hates the devil, thus they endeavor to make them odious to all mankind. See and be amazed to see how this world is imposed upon. Number 1. Satan's sworn enemies are represented as his friends. The apostles who pulled down the devil's kingdom were called devils. Thus men laid to their charge not only things which they knew not, but things which they abhorred, and were directly contrary to and the reverse of it. Number 2. Satan's sworn servants would be thought to be his enemies, and they never more effectually do his work than when they pretend to be fighting against him. Many times they who themselves are nearest akin to the devil are most apt to father others upon him, and those that paint him on others' clothes have him reigning in their own hearts. It is well there is a day coming when, as it follows, verse 26, that which is hid will be brought to light.